Do we think in general that humanity wants harmony over and above chaos? Because it seems to me that it's quite a paradoxical thing. Because if you ask people, would you prefer harmony over chaos? Then I would think the vast majority of people would vote for the harmony. And yet, within their minds and their heart would be friction. And as to where this friction is derived from, is anybody's guess, really. It could be deep, unconscious, unresolved issues. It could be unconscious hate. All different sorts of things which, as human beings, we gather like stones gather moss. How many of you who have internal monologues or dialogues have negative thoughts, have pervasive thoughts that are just a pain in the ass? And as much as you would love to have harmony with the world, you can't even find it in your own mind and heart, because there are these little evil demons which just constantly cause havoc. How many people do we know that complain about negative forces which prevent them from living a full and free life? The voices which tell you you can't, and of course you're a failure and all this sort of thing, and then the voices that deplete your confidence and instill doubt. I'm still dealing with people to this very day who have these pervasive thoughts, and so I listen to quite a lot of videos in relation to mental health and how people can get abreast of their minds and try to get some level of governance. And isn't it a very curious thing? Sigmund Freud, over 100 years ago, stated that one of the most shocking of human revelations is that we're not even master in our own houses. This is our house, people. Here and here. We're not even master here. Why? Because there are other entities, evidently. You see, I can make videos like this and don't get a lot of engagement, and most people don't want to accept them because they find it too terrifying to even contemplate. But the point is, if we, as egoic, educated human beings, we don't even have to be that educated, really, just to make a distinction between a chaos and a level of perfection. And even though we may desire the perfection, and we may feel as if we are doing everything in our power to attain that perfection, still there are always these negative energies which are working very, very hard to destroy that. Hence the notion of the devil and demons. Now, I think we would all accept, metaphorically, that we are possessed by demons to a larger or lesser degree. And this changes pertaining to our circumstances. We all know that when we enter into a bad environment, then we're gonna get a lot of negative attachments, and the negative energies that we've got are going to be a lot more pronounced. Now, I've travelled extensively enough around the world to know that this thing that you see at this moment in time can vary massively depending on the environment. Now, I've lived in some of the most beautiful places on the world, and I've also lived in some of the potentially most dangerous and chaotic places. For instance, when I was living right on the outer parameter of an African ghetto, I suffered the consequences of that and nearly lost my life. And albeit all the people I encountered were also very jolly and friendly, seemingly, of course it only takes one to spoil your day. And so I had one such occasion which spoiled my day, where I was shot in my own home. But over and above those negative energies which come to capitalise on our energy, you see, this robber was considering that it's highly likely that I would have had copious amounts of money stashed under my bed in the house. As it happened, I never had a single dollar, and so all he made off with was a gold ring, a cheap phone, and I think that was about it. And so, he had blood on his hands because he shot me for that. And I wonder what sort of conscience he had when he walked away and he looked in his palm and he saw this very, very distinctive gold ring, because I had it made specifically. It was a skull and crossbone out of 18 karat rose gold, and it was quite a big lumpy thing. And so he, obviously he would have sold it at some stage, but he was risking being apprehended by doing that, because I did actually put a warrant out, an extensive fee for anybody that had information leading to it, and I described this ring that would have been attempted to be exchanged, and so nothing ever came of it, but potentially it could have been very, very difficult for him, just for one little gold ring that he probably ended up selling for $20, when the times are hard. But over and above that, then when we have people who have varying opinions, and their opinions mean so much to them, they are actually an appendage of themselves, unwittingly, because people, they really feel challenged when you challenge their opinions, and it's like you're trying to take away one of their limbs or something. You're trying to extract an eye. They will fight you tooth and nail to protect their biases and their opinions and their beliefs. And when people say something contrary to those beliefs, then they will attack you. And so isn't it bizarre how just because we believe or think something differently, then our fellow human beings on some occasions will want to kill us. Many feuds throughout the years in relation to religion, many millions of people have lost their lives, and that's just one example. But then having channels on YouTube or on some sort of internet platform, or even writing a book, I've heard so many stories from very educated, learned people who have written their hypothesis, and they've been so viciously attacked, and you think to yourself, how does anybody consider it's that important if somebody's just got a new idea? And all the people that are online prominently these days, they all get attacked in huge ways by often their peers, people who have studied similar sort of subject matter. They went to, similar universities and all this sort of thing, and yet they attack maliciously, and they want to destroy your reputation and inflict mental pain upon you. And so I ask myself, because if we ask the vast majority of people in a poll, do you want chaos or do you want simplicity in your life? Do you want to be able to feel free, unencumbered and loved and protected and all those things? Or are you afraid of vocalising your opinions for fear that your fellow man, who would proclaim under other circumstances to be your friend and ally, would turn against you vehemently? I once was privy to a little story, and it was being read by the school teacher, and I think I was probably maybe 7 years old when I was listening to this story. And the story being read by the teacher was about a group of balloons. There was a group of children who had a group of balloons, and most of the balloons were all very brightly coloured, as balloons are. But amongst these balloons there was a black one, funnily enough. And I've never personally seen a black balloon, but in the story there was a black balloon, and the other children didn't like the black balloon because it wasn't bright and it wasn't like their balloons, and so they attacked this balloon with stones and they popped it. And then the owner of this balloon was very sad, and at that time, I'm sure all of his kids listening to that, we felt sorry for the black balloon. Now, I never equated that story with racism. I was too young, and when I was 7 years old, there was barely a single, Asian or black man or woman in our country. Indians started the influx in the early 60s from, I think, Ethiopia and places like that. But, I had no awareness of these cultural differences and how people feel so strongly about their culture and their creed, and how xenophobic they are and how threatened they are. But I did feel sorry for the black balloon, and so at least it showed that I did have empathy. And to this day, the last thing I am is xenophobic or racist. I just never have been. I've always been a very culturally diverse person. I've always loved going to different places, meeting different people, trying different foods, listening and learning about their cultures and all different sorts of things. And you would have never heard me speak about any other creed in a derogatory way. You would only have heard me speak about ugly people, fat people, excessively tall, excessively small, excessively thin, all these anomalies which are outside the perfection of the human being, And I think deep down, most of us, we harbour some sort of a judgment. If someone is like 7 feet tall and you're gangly, you go, what the fuck? You just do, don't you? Because you look at them and you say to yourself, well, how do they do this and how do they do that? And how do they manage to buy clothes, and where do they buy the 8-foot bed that they need? And what about cars? All these things that what about going on a plane when you've only got like about 1/2 inch of knee room behind the seat in front of you, and all these sort of things. You see, the world, it isn't actually even set up for all these human anomalies. It's just set up for one stereotypical average human being. And anybody else outside of that average just has to fucking deal with it. And so they're not catered for. And, it's only been in relatively recent times when you would see that there's facility for wheelchair. Because for years when I was growing up, there was nothing like that, for these people. And so eventually we're starting to cater for a few of them. And so we look at the dichotomous nature of the human being, and many people have a bone of contention of how I deliver my videos, because I'm not being complicit with everybody's the same and we're all one and we're all perfect human beings, No, I see differences, and lots of people do see differences, just like these, or just like the story in the book that the teacher read. The person who wrote that book for children because they knew that we see differences. But you see, they don't want us to see any differences anymore. It's a peculiar thing, isn't it? They don't want us to notice, obese people or, excessively this, that and the other. And God forbid that you'd call anybody ugly these days. Well, when I was growing up, ugly people, ginger people, fat people, lanky people, everybody outside of the perfect human being got it. And they got it big time. And they got it incessantly. And they learned to deal with it. And they eventually knew who they were, They accepted who they were and they learned to live with who they were. Whereas these days, this is why we've got all these snowflakes. They just don't want anybody to recognise who they are. They all want to assume their individuated beauty and perfection, like some sort of psychological illness. And we're being forced as society to be blind and to be terrified of seeing differences. So what's that going to do to our psyche in the long run, when we no longer notice differences anymore and everything's the same and we're all one, and nobody's any more clever or any more beautiful, any more better than anybody else? And in recent times on my videos, one silly woman, "You're no special than everybody else, we're all special, we've all got these abilities." And really, what sort of a silly fucking snowflake world do you live in? And so, I was pretty kind in the comments, but she was relentless until I just couldn't upload her comments anymore. Just stupid. And what can you say about these people? They've had their rational mind killed. And are you all familiar with the extent of the liberalists these days and how hysterical they are and how irrational their arguments are? It's such a pervasive scourge that most of our intellectuals now are saying, fuck these cunts, we are going to stand up to them, because I am not going to be living in a world which they are trying to create. Because there are fucking differences. We all see differences. We don't have to be mean and cruel about it, but there's no way am I not going to be seeing the differences. And if the differences are apparent and need to be said, then it will be said, and I'm going to say it. This is where Peterson took his stance, against the irrational bullshit of the postmodernists and the liberalists. In my book, I have quite a large section on how to defeat these gremlins, I call them, these random generated spirits that will come and take residence within our psyche if we aren't wise enough to be able to recognise them and know that we can do something about them. And so when I'm speaking with people who are working on their own psyche and banishing their annoying demons, then there's quite a lot of a learning curve to go through. And when we look online, we can see many videos speaking about how to eradicate negative internal dialogues and pervasive negative thoughts and destructive thoughts and all this sort of thing. And it's not only thoughts, it's entities that make people do stupid things all the time, like if they have attention deficit disorder, entities that just don't allow them to stay concentrated, O.C.D, entities that imprison people into perpetually doing stupid repetitive tasks that are meaningless. And so I was listening to a David Goggins and Huberman interview, about 2.5 hours, recommended by one of the viewers, thank you. And Goggins is speaking about his demons, and his demons are very, very accentuated. They will never ever allow him a moment's rest. He is actually a man possessed by these demons, which tell him on a constant basis that he's a piece of shit. And this is what he says over and over again, that really David Goggins is a piece of shit, and he has to work day and night laboriously to expel these demons, or at least take mastery over the demons. And that's why he gets up at 2 a.m. every morning and goes and does his run, and the doctors have been telling him after all his knee operations and this, that and the other that he shouldn't do any more running, but he does and he will, and he's heading ultimately for a very bad time, because when his body can no longer fend off the demons by keep meeting his high level of perfection by running 200, 300 miles, in one go, and these sort of things that he's done. When he no longer can do that, then these demons are going to get so massive that I fear for him, because he says at this moment in time there's no way that he's ever going to stop. But of course he is going to stop. He is going to be stopped, and then his mind is going to have to deal with that. And so we've all got these internal dialogues, gremlins, free radical spirits that we're dealing with, and there's a lot to learn about them, and we really do have to take them seriously, because if we don't take them seriously and we just pass them off, then at our own peril. And of course I get the Christians who tell me there's only one spirit, and that's the spirit of Jesus, and all this sort of thing. And you can see, well, they have got no idea about their possessions, and they are probably subject to all these things that I've been speaking about, and their life is in actual fact they live in hell, but they just keep praying to Jesus instead of addressing the demons in their minds, because ain't no Jesus extricating, exorcising anybody's demons, ever. It's never happened. I've never heard it happen, except some bullshit fiction when Jesus cast out demons from people's minds, and then they go running into pigs and this, that and the other. But the reality is, people, that the only people that are going to be casting out your demons are you, unless you are absolute devout Catholic and you're going to have an exorcism performed on you. And so, good God. But the human being, we're a very complex creature. There's lots to be thought about, and we really do have to take things seriously. And if we are not comfortable with ourselves, plural, then we have to look at which facet of ourselves we are uncomfortable with. We have to weed them out, we have to address them, we have to recognize them, then we have to work out how to eradicate them. And so in my book I speak about how to eradicate unwanted spirits, demons, and if you just think it's thought forms, if you just think, oh, my mind's just full of negative thought forms, and that's as far as you want to take it, you still have to work out how you're going to get rid of these thought forms. And if you start to look into it, you'll very quickly realise that these thought forms are in actual fact entities, because the thing that's thinking and acting has to be an energy form. It has to be something which is ultimately as physical as you are, because you're not physical. You're just an illusion the same as any other physical object. And when we realize that this is a metaphysical dimension, if you care to educate yourself, by myriad of people will tell you this is a metaphysical dimension. Forget about the physical. It just isn't. And so, I'm still dealing with people, and there's lots of people on the channel, you the viewers, who just insist that this is a physical. You are still in the Richard Dawkins mindset of complete non-acceptance and denial of the spiritual cosmos. But as soon as you ever get your heads around it, then you will enter into a whole different ball game. Well, that's probably one of the reasons why you don't do it, because you're just too terrified, petrified of the notion. But, you don't have to be too petrified by it, because you can, in actual fact, work with these entities. You can invite in the good ones and you can expel the bad ones. I suppose this depends on your constitution, because you look around you and you see that people have resident evil demons within them. They have no awareness, and if they do have awareness, then they most certainly don't care, because they've got so many bad attributes. It's unbelievable. They're just prepared to go on living with them. But you see, David Goggins wasn't prepared to go on living with the evil demons that were residing with him, within him, which kept him fat, lazy, lying, insecure, and feeling like he was a piece of shit. He decided he wanted to eradicate those demons and free himself, and he did. But the thing is, like he says, those demons are just waiting. They're just there, waiting to take occupancy one more time.